Heyo, Patrick from Bikes or Death here, and I've got a great episode for y'all today. Kerry Staite with kLite is in the house, all the way from Australia, dropping hot gosp just for you. You'll get it when you listen to the episode. It's been a crazy day, and I don't have a lot to say, so once again, Kerry was my guest on the podcast. He's always fun, always entertaining, always authentic. And I absolutely love the opportunity to get a chance to chat with him every single time, and already looking forward to the next time. So I'm just going to get right to the show. But before I do, please do me a favor. Head over to bikesfordeath.com. Find your way to support the show. And as always, do not forget, please, go to iTunes and leave a review. It is very helpful, and I appreciate it very, very much. So without further ado, let's get to the show.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
Okay, very good. Do you want to touch on the wildfires in Australia, or?
Well, firstly, I'd like to, just say a little statement, given that it is Australia Day, holiday here in Australia.
Tell us what that is. I'm actually not familiar with that.
Well, it's a day that is essentially, now this is from my perspective, and my perspective is someone that was born in another country. I was born in New Zealand, and I was brought up next to the Māori people, the native people, and I was taught they're no different, and I didn't know any different. And it was a little bit of a shock, to be honest, coming over to here and seeing how differently the native people are viewed. So Australia Day is essentially a celebration of Australia and barbecues and all that sort of stuff, and the founding of a nation. And in some respects, it also represents Invasion Day from another perspective, which is when, the colonial ships turned up, and the result was, lots of people were killed and the regimes were changed, and really the Aboriginal people, they were the ones that kind of lost in the whole bargain. And it was such a shame to see such an amazing culture that has so much knowledge and so much respect for the land to be, disrespected in such a way. And so there is a call out to change the day so that all Australians can feel more comfortable about it. And so that's quite a big thing that's happening right now in Australia. And I guess today, being the public holiday for Australia Day, it's all on our minds. So I would certainly like to give my personal opinion and my acknowledgement for the land in which that I'm doing this podcast on, and the land traditionally owned by the Aboriginal people. And I wanted to say I'm sorry for, all the injustices and heartaches that has happened. And I respect their love of the nature and their love of the world. I'm actually have a little bit of Māori myself in me, which is a native New Zealand culture. I had some land that was given back to me by the New Zealand government as a show of respect. I gave that away. I signed my name and gave that back to the people of my tribe to use, and I did that with great respect. And I hope that, somehow that we can all, as Australians, come together and respect our nation as a one, rather than being segregated. It really does feel like, the 70s, America in the 70s, it's pretty bad. So I just wanted to say that real quick. That's Australia Day in a nutshell, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. I love your you're starting off strong. You don't have
Got to be punchy. Boom.
Boom.
Punch it.
Well, I detracted you a little bit from talking about the wildfires. I didn't know if you had any thoughts that you wanted to share. I mean, I'm over here in America, and I've seen a lot of like relief efforts going on. And it seems like a lot of people are really keyed in on that and wanting to help. And it's also sparked a greater conversation about climate change and all kinds of stuff. But you being in Australia, didn't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Well, I would, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me to talk on your platform. I hope that your listeners can maybe gain a greater understanding of what's happening here on the ground. I am here. I have smoke most days, and that's been going for quite a long time. We wear masks. If it gets bad, and I have a mask if I want to go riding, because I just thought, well, I'm sick of not riding because of the smoke, so I'll wear a mask so I can breathe a bit easy. But I think the greater debate would be the reasons why. And when I had a look at a lot of the facts, there was something that I actually never realised, as I had my head down doing something else for 10 years, and I locked myself in a cave. And so, 10 years has gone by, and I've gone, oh, the world is very different. And I needed to learn a little bit of stuff, and I never realised that there was two fights that I'm engaged in. And firstly, it's to educate the world about, the reduction of our footprint, our consumption. But the second, which I didn't realise, is to be a little bit of a myth buster. I didn't realise the amount of misinformation. So I'll give you an example. From America, I'm seeing a lot of information coming about the fires, and a lot of information of what caused the fires, and that's been, I guess, voiced. A lot of it's not true at all. And I thought, hey, where's all this coming from? And then I had a look into it, and I realised that me being here, knowing kind of, what's happening, have a better idea, obviously, than what's happening in America. You guys maybe find it hard to get any real information other than what's in the media. But what I realised was the misinformation that's out there is in some parts being perpetuated by some forms of media, and these forms of media may have other agendas. Some misinformation may be perpetuated by the governments. They may have other agendas that work with other motives. And I realise there's a two-part effect there. Firstly, the misinformation is something that needs to be talked about, and try and break down a couple of those myths, and then try and get to the core information. And certainly some of the misinformation about arson was something that was quite surprising. The fire chiefs have come out personally and said on television that there hasn't really been an increase in arson or a decrease in arson. In this case, arson, didn't really play a role, and certainly it's a good, easy beat up to use. And some of the memes or whatever they're called, I'm not real good at those young things, they're coming out with it's all about, arson and stuff, and if you think that it's global warming, you're dumb and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's really clever. That's clever. And then I thought, okay, I had a look into the budgets of the misinformation. And then some companies have the misinformation budgets in the millions of dollars. And then when I had a look at the companies that have these big misinformation budgets, they're primarily oil and gas companies, which I thought was interesting because perhaps they spend a lot of money to help some information be hidden and some information be not, to perpetuate confirmation bias by saying things that people want to hear. Now, sure, the things might be factual, but taken out of context, they can be construed into another manner. So the arson, you probably heard about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah, I'm wondering, do y'all in Australia suffer from the same type of mistrust with media that I think we suffer from in America?
I think not all media is bad, but I think people need to be discerning, and I think it's really hard. I think the arson, I think the fireys know what they're talking about, and so when they say that, I believe them. I believe them when they say that the fire loading and the backburning issue has minimal impact on fires of this size. They said the major cause of the issues was the fact that it has not rained in 2 years. It hasn't rained. We missed the rains completely. And I was out bush a year and a bit ago, and then I was out bush a bit ago, and the difference was phenomenal. Everything's dead. It's dead. There's no rain out there. Everything's a tinderbox. And so that's nothing to do with backburning. That's nothing to do with the greenies stopping people from backburning. Backburning makes no difference. They were saying that things were burning that they backburned a year ago. And so therefore backburning doesn't really make a difference. The fact that there is a tinderbox out there, it's so dry that it just creates these crazy firestorms. In fact, it creates its own weather patterns. And we had 3 big fires merge, and we've lost trees and land and animals the size of European countries.
That's all. Yeah, I was looking at some graphs that show the size and basically swallowing, like you said, several European countries.
We are the poster child of global warming.
I was about to ask you, is the sense among other Australians that it is arson or that is global warming? Like, what is the...
Okay, so all the young people are mega pissed off. They are pissed off. And a really important guy came out and he said that as soon as the young people are old enough to vote, all these current governments are gone. So, in essence, we just need to get through the times where the old people are in power, and we need to wait and work towards the time when the young people are in power. And so what it means is it works on a really grassroots level. The governments don't have the power because now the oil companies have more money than the governments. The poor governments, they're trying to do the best they can, and they get money from gas and coal, and we've got more coal than anybody, and we're ripping it up and selling it off like hotcakes. We're selling anything that's not bolted down because that's the only thing we can do, because we're built on this old-fashioned way of working. I'm sure if they had the opportunity to restart today, you're not bringing cattle onto the land and destroying it unsustainably. You're farming kangaroos, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer if you had to start again, right? If you had to start again, you're not chopping all the frickin' trees down, right, clear felling the land and charging people if they got trees on it more money, so they have to clear the land. You're probably not going to do that, right? There's a whole bunch of things that if we had to start again, we're not going to be doing. You know what I mean? And so we've just got to get to that point. We've got to get to the point where we vote, right? So the governments can't do anything. really, the Australian government is in complete denial. In fact, I think they must think we're dumb, because the bullshit they're giving us, they have the scientists, they have the answers to the questions that they asked. They had a report 8 years ago that stated before 2020 there would be massive fires in Australia. Now, last year, all the police chiefs, or a bunch of fire chiefs, they came, now I'm just going to look at my microphone again, all good. They came to the Parliament and said, we want to talk to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister wouldn't talk to them. So they've got all the information. They know what's going on. They don't have an answer. They have coal, they have gas, they don't have another answer. Can you imagine, right, if we spend billions of dollars supporting the coal and gas industry, right? Can you imagine if we spend $1 billion on solar panels? I mean,
or wind
look,
energy.
Obviously, it's not as simple as that. But, I mean, we need to get to the point where we need to stop arguing about what's happening and get on to what's actually happening. And the only way that people can do that is to actually vote. Now, we need to vote on many levels. We need to vote with what we consume on a daily level, because capitalism is geared where the people that don't have the sales die, right? So we need to stop buying rubbish, plastic, crap, and start buying more stuff that's less single-use plastic. Okay, so firstly, we've got to vote with the products we buy. We've got to vote with, we've got to vote with the people we put in, and we've got to vote with the information that we give out. And we've got to stop being silent, sitting on the fence. We've got to speak up. We have to speak up now, otherwise it's going to be too late. And it's, we're going to have to live in a world where every bike needs a kLite. And I don't want to have to, I don't want it to be like that. I don't want kLite to be an optional. I don't want it to have to be like, fuck, I've got to have Mad Max style shit because we fucked this shit up, and for a small amount of time we gave their shareholders, some good returns. And who wants that? So that's sort of the vote thing. We've got to vote with our feet to make sure that the old people get removed and that the young people get put in, and they know what to do. I mean, they've got the science. There's people ready to go to help fix this. We just got to stop arguing with all the old people and stop generating as much misinformation, and hopefully we can usher in this brave new world. So I just wanted to say that real quick, get that out, get that behind, because that is based on my personal opinion, and it's not shared by other people that I can vouch for.
Yeah.
So,
hey,
boom.
You're only allowed to, or you're only able to have your own opinions, and your own perspectives. So nobody can hold you accountable for having to have the weight of everybody else's. This has got to be extra frustrating for you, because I feel like, based on what you said the last time we spoke, I asked you what does kLite do? And you said, we're getting ready for the zombie apocalypse, man. Like, we're getting ready for the end of the world. And I feel like this segues into your company and why kLite.
I hate being right, Patrick. I hate being right. You know what I mean? And we've known what could possibly happen for 20, 30 years. No. We know that at one time the world was 6 degrees warmer than it was now. We know that the oceans were really high. We know that there is natural fluctuations that causes many ice ages and many heat waves. We know that, and we don't deny that. And that's often used as a debunker for climate change. Oh, but it was hot here, and it was hot in 1800, and it was 50 degrees. And I'm saying it was fucking 6 degrees warmer, and all the oceans were fucking melted. All the ices were melted, and oceans are really higher. That has happened. We've been there. What we're seeing now is if we look back 2,000 years, we see that we're actually heading towards an ice age. We were actually heading towards a little mini ice age, and it's to do with slight changes in the orbit where we're slightly further away from the sun over a good couple of laps it happens. And we were heading towards an ice age, but now because of the carbon dioxide we've pushed into the air and the methane that again is, not helping, the planet is warming. And Australia, firstly, have made up some lies and say that we're going to be within the Kyoto Protocol, which is an old protocol. No one wants that protocol. That was to 2 degrees. We need to stay under 1.5 degrees. So Australia's done some sort of shoddy things and brought some credits from past things ago and said, oh yeah, we're going to do it right now, but that's just for the 2 degree one. Everyone's throwing that out. We want the 1.5 one. Australia won't even sign that. I think we're one of the only people in the world, maybe America, don't know, but certainly we won't sign that because we live on coal, and so we are going to be one of the major triggers. Now, I just wanted to debunk that we're going to hit our targets. That's bullshit. So that's certainly been debunked. The other thing is that we're 1.6% of the problem. Now, if we calculate how much coal that we give out and then look at the problem, it's certainly the stats look differently. Now, there is argument that you could get coal other places and they'll just sell it to that. Sure, there's arguments that no one should do anything because it's someone else's problem, of course. But you don't see me doing that, waiting for someone else to make the best light in the world, because you've got to get out there and do it yourself. You've got to stand up and be true. So each of us need to, stand up and be true to what we believe in. And if we believe that all these things are changing our world, that we make a change, we should endeavour to do that. And so basically we've all got to try and work towards this new future.
I was just talking to Jolene Holland just like 3 days ago, and she said, we were talking about another issue, but it's like, what can you do? And she kind of turned it on its head and said, yeah, what can you do? What can you do? What can each person do? And do that, nobody can solve it by themselves, but if everybody does a little bit or a lot, then.
And that's 100%. I'm so glad you said that. That's 100%, in my opinion, correct. It's all about what we can do in the individual. And the reason why I'm here today is because I was lying in a gutter, dismissed by society. And at that second, I knew my life had been rated as 0. No one cared whether I lived or died. And that was a very special moment for me. I had to stop feeling sorry for myself, and I had to make the decision to do it or die, essentially. And I thought, well, if my life's worth nothing, I can go for it. All bets are off. So I thought, what can one person do? You know what I mean? What is the power of one person? I wanted to show that one person can have immense power. Now, you don't have to do what I do, but one person can make a vote. One person can bring their own bag and fill their own, stuff in their bag and not waste plastic. One person can ask, oh, look, do you mind if I have, a different type of straw rather than a plastic straw? One person makes all the difference. In fact, it's only singularly that we're going to win, because to become singular and do all the same things, we're really getting together as a whole. And so I think it's a no-brainer for the young generation. I don't think the young generation are wired the same way as the older generation.
And they're learning about it in schools. I have a 10-year-old daughter in 4th grade, and they're learning about climate change, and she's having discussions with me about things that we can do. It's being instilled in them from a young age. So yeah, wise words, my friend, wise words, as always.
Well, yeah, I think it's just where it's all heading. I think the conversation's coming out. We just need to keep singing the song and, saying what we believe in and voting accordingly. And hopefully we'll have enough time to get this happening, because we certainly have the smarts, we certainly have the brain power, and if we could just spend a 15th of what we spend on the military on trying to fix this situation, I feel confident that we can achieve something great, and we can move into this new world, and what's planned, just so that listeners are informed. Industry will be done on the planets, and it will be done in space, and Earth will be zoned residential. So this is why we're eager to get to the moon and get to Mars, because it's resource rich, and the resources is what is needed to build the modern future. And so this is why there's a lot of money's being spent on space, because Earth needs to be zoned residential and not fit for industry.
Oh, I like that.
So that is a community announcement. This is
That's a worldwide
Kerry
announcement.
from kLite, and this is the soft, soothing voice to relax you after a hard ride.
Yeah, man. So what do you say we talk about some kLite now that you've solved all the world's problems and predicted the future?
Well, what I can say is I will reveal all.
All what? Before the end of this podcast?
Indeed. All the juicy goss will be revealed.
All right. Let's get into it. Well, first I wanted to talk about the Bikepacker Ultra that you sent me in the mail.
All right, so just to get it straight, because there's too many weird names, I'll just pull up there. So the Bikepacker was the little gold one, so the Bikepacker Pro. And so the Ultra, it's just a kLite Ultra, because I think there's probably getting too many words. So I believe that you received a kLite Ultra mountain bike version. Is that the case?
Well, Kerry, since you made it and shipped it to me, I believe that's probably accurate. Yeah, so...
I forget. There's hundreds of orders between that. I don't know what you've got. I was just checking. Woo!
I don't know.
Mountain bike.
I don't know either.
It's got the fuzzies on the outside.
Yeah.
Fuzzies on the outside.
Let's talk about those fuzzies on the outside. I mean, you call them fuzzies. They're like little lights, like glowing lights.
Yeah, well, those little windows they're kind of like Venetian blinds sideways, I guess. They reflect the light out more to an angle, and that's where you get your 180-degree beam. It's a very special optic. It's an oval optic, so it actually is only 11-degree beam width tall, but 154-degree beam width wide.
Okay, I have a couple ideas why that light is there. Do you want to tell? You tell me.
Okay, so obviously they're not like that on the road version. So the mountain bike version has 2 of the fuzzies, 1 high-speed spot. Now, the road one has 2 high-speed spots, and they come on straight away. So you have the most light straight away. That's great. And then the road one has a little bit of wide that kicks in as you get going faster, because you obviously got less of a tighter corner. The faster you go, the more archy your corner is. The light opens up, adds that wide beam with the single fuzzy in the middle for the road beam. What we're talking about is the lovely mountain bike version, the Swiss Army knife of bicycle lights. And the reason why the wide is there is, firstly, a narrow or a spot beam would flare off trees, and so the intensity of the beam has a higher reflection, and so when you're in tight single track, you end up blinding yourself because the reflected light shines back into your eyes. That makes your irises contract, and then your eyes are less receptive to light. We don't want to kill off your night eyes. We want to keep your night eyes. And how we keep the night eyes is by having a more flood beam. And we will certainly know that from 24-hour racing. We generally have the flood on the bar, or I do anyway, and then the spot on the head so I can look where it is. The spot with its more narrow is harder to position. So we have that on the head. So the wide beam doesn't flare off the trees. But when you're in single track and you're turning your handlebars quite a lot, generally at slower speed, your beam ends up pointing away. Now, that's all very well if you've got a helmet light on, but this is a tour divide specialist light. And what we've found is anything on your head over many kilometres can get very tiring. So my goal is to have only on your head a very lightweight LED battery torch for map reading, maybe crawling into a bivvy or something like that. I don't want to use it. It's just there just in case. I don't want to have a battery light. I don't want to have a rechargeable light on there. I don't want that. So the idea of the wide beam is to basically not need the helmet light and give you the ability to see in corners when your bars are pointing the other way in single track. Now, the bike light knows how fast you're going, and so it won't shine the high beam when you're in that single track speed. As you start to open up and get faster and faster, that's when the high beam kicks in. So that ultra wide beam is really designed as a helmet light or a replacement for a helmet light, and B, less flaring off the trees. And of course the bonus factor is it's a camp light, so you can set up your tent, because a stand light will last for around about 20 to 25 minutes at good brightness. Then it will start to dim off for up to 1 hour, allowing you to stuff around and find wood and not have to engage the helmet light or the map reading light again. So that's certainly the main reasons to have those wide beams, to have that twin beam style of light, to have one type of beam for one purpose, and to have that second beam for the throw up ahead, or the high beam, or the spot, just like a car would have. Does that answer your question at all?
Well, no, it didn't. It was a great answer, and I think a lot of people probably needed to know it. I was actually asking about, on the very right and left hand side, there's a tiny little it's not even a light, it's like a clear section where the light can come through. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. There's some side windows. It just gives a little bit of extra visibility on that version.
Well, it lets you see your hands all the time. Like, it just gives you a little bit. So I don't know if you're like eating a Snickers bar while you're going down the road or whatever. I didn't know if that was what...
You know, I love that. I love that function, and it wasn't until I was on my bike looking over at my wife's bike did I notice how bright they were. I actually never realised how bright they were because I'm on the bike not looking at them. And it was such a shame to lose that function on the newly released light, which we will talk about soon. So unfortunately, folks, to make the new version smaller, that's one feature that had to be dropped that I did like, that I did love. So apologies there. You can scoop up the older versions, and I know the current version, which we call the kLite Ultra, we're now calling the Ultra V1. That will be certainly prized for that side windows, because that was, like all good things, a mistake to start with. All good things are a mistake because we can't comprehend amazing things. We need to be doing stuff and make a mistake and realise that. So that was an injection point for the sealant, and we had it on one side, and then I sparked it up, and all this light poured out there, and I went, "Oh my God, that looks amazing! Let's put it on the other side."
That's so funny.
So, like everything, it was a mistake. But don't tell anyone.
Yeah, you're giving away all your
podcast
secrets,
or
man.
anything.
I was all prepared to. I had this whole idea. I was like, man, Kerry is a genius. He even thought to put these little glow worm lights on the sides so I can always see where my hands are, or, whatnot. So yeah, I will just.
That's actually the light reflected through the side of the optic, and because the potting's clear, right? Because the potting's clear on the inside, we could achieve that.
All right. Well, you want to know my favorite thing about the Ultra?
Oh, I'd love to. Feedback is so important for me because I actually don't get to do much test riding these days because I'm working so hard. So I really appreciate your feedback. Please lay it on me.
Well, it does everything that you say it does. I mean, you are the mad scientist that's figured out how to convert AC, is that right? AC power?
AC power, old school analog
that's
technology with power booster. Do it all on AC. Don't flick over to computers or chips. It's old school Tesla style.
Yeah.
Continue.
I mean, all that stuff. You do it much better than I do. But I mean, the thing that I really love is I can't tell you how many times cars stop and from great distances away, like to the point where I almost feel bad for them because they don't know what to make. They have no idea what's coming. They just see this big bright light coming at them, and they always stop and wait for me.
Well, a single light is known like a motorbike light, right? And the weird thing is, once they can perceive there's a twin light, it's like, oh, okay, so is that a car in the distance? Now, we all know cyclists and motorbikes don't count, but cars, wow, that could really muck up my paintwork. Yeah. So I've got to check and make sure that's not a car. In fact, I'm going to wait here. And, hey, wait a minute, what the hell is that car going so slowly for?
Yeah. I think that's
and I get that all the time. Like, so many people tell me that. So what they use a little switch on the bar, right? Now, because it's got a really powerful stand light, what I end up doing is I switch it off when I pass people. And it just sits there in stand light mode and it's happy to keep going for like 20 minutes, right? Yeah. And so if I'm on the highway with trucks, I can tell the trucks that it's not a car, like I'll dip, right? So there's all these kind of like flashing rules for truckies and stuff. Once you know them and you use them on the highway, you can communicate with the truckies and you can tell them, okay, your load has cleared my vehicle, I can flash my lights, and then they know that they can pull back in. Some of them might have road trains on, etc., and it's hard to judge the distance behind their vehicle. And so I use that bar switch to dip and flash the truckies. But I tell you, I get that story so much. It's so ridiculously bright.
I think you're right on, though. I think it confuses them because I have the Goldie, and that one works. I still love that one. It works well, but just my own anecdotal evidence, cars wait for me. I mean, for like 100 yards,
Well, I totally agree. Like I've been doing martial arts for a long, long time. In fact, I had beautiful hair when I started. I was an enthusiastic young man and I trained 3 times a week. And I loved it. And I was the guinea pig that the teacher always brought up to do all the tricks and stuff because, I was like in the circus and stuff. So I was pretty tricky with it all. And one of the things that they instilled upon us was use everything and use anything. And that just means be resourceful. So, you fall over, you pick up some grass or some dirt, you'll get up and you throw it in their face. There might be a couple of guys there, you roll over, pick up a stick, use anything. And some of these features and functions are really use anything and everything. So I thought, okay, so a bird has a patch on its side of its head, right? And it looks like a big eye, right? And it's there because that's what survival's done. It's put it there for a reason. And so I thought, well, I want 2 eyes, right? I want 2 eyes like a car. I thought use everything, right? And so that's just one of the little benefits, right? But if you've got a road one, that's even more powerful again. Yeah. So the road one is it's perceived to be 3 times brighter than the mountain bike one. Wow. dimming off the light with those fuzzy optics really reduces a lot of the light, and so you're using that light as a compromise of throw. I think it's worth it on the mountain bike one. I think it's very versatile, and I think the high beam is more than good enough for anything. But certainly the road one is a lot more powerful. Now, if you were to use a helmet light on short duration trips, you could probably get away, I reckon, easily with the road one by itself in the bush. I ride the road one through tight corners and everything with no helmet light, and that's fine. So quick compare of the beam patterns there.
You touched on actually two things that I want to talk about or mention. One is that while you were talking about the new Ultra, the mountain bike edition, the one that I have a LED pin mounted light on my helmet at all times. And while you were talking, I was just kind of thinking to myself that I never use that damn thing hardly at all. And I mean, it's just zip tied on there. I don't ever think about it. Every once in a while, there's a car that doesn't look like they're going to stop, and I'll turn it on and like point it right at their eyes, you know, and make sure they see me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't, you don't have to do that very often. But yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, man, I don't ever even use that thing, and which is just a thought I had. But what I wanted to ask you was, I think it would be helpful to break down. Let's say you can only afford one light, one kLite, right? How do you?
Yeah, definitely the mountain bike one. Definitely the mountain bike.
Okay, that's yeah.
The mountain bike's the ultimate one. Like the road one's your second light for sure.
So the road, if you're like on the road, if you're doing Trans America or something like that, and you're just going to be on the road 100%, the road bike version would suit you. But if you do more around all around riding,
I'll give you a little clue. So me and my wife, we ride together. That's our thing. We do riding, and that's kind of. It's injecting time into our marriage, and it's a win-win for us. On her bike's the mountain bike one because it does everything. It's got that super wide beam. Now, I'm a little bit more experienced rider. I've been riding and racing for 30 years. So I ride the road one, but certainly my mountain bike one is the mountain bike one. And so and with my wife, I do a lot more kind of gravel, a lot more less jumps and mountain bikey stuff because it's harder to loop up 100k rides fully off road. So I've got the road one on that bike, but certainly the mountain bike one is your Swiss Army knife. It incorporates so much more than any other light on the market with its twin beam. It is designed for everything. So without a doubt, I recommend everyone, if you're going to start with one light, definitely it's the mountain bike one. Okay. You can do everything. You can road ride with it. You can do anything with it because the punchy beam's really punchy. It's only when you're have a high average speed, you're a faster rider, you're doing that gravel race where you guys are sitting on 30, 25 mile an hour, average speed. And that's crazy. That's where you've got a lot more throw down the road. On my road beam, I cannot, some lights you can tilt it up and then I can't see the beam, so you kind of tilt it back down. On my road beam, there's nowhere where I can tilt it up and I outrun the beam. I simply do not outrun the beam. It's got that much throw, that much lux with 20,000 lux, which is phenomenal. So certainly the faster you're going, the higher throw or lux or punch that you require. And so you just got to look at your average speed. If you look at the TDR, your average speed's going to be, 8 to 12 mile an hour. So certainly mountain bike is the number one weapon, in my opinion.
You mentioned the tilt. That's one thing I've played around with on mine, and you're right. It casts a good light up, down. But is there a recommended tilt angle or? No,
certainly what you want to do is, if indeed you're riding a little bit faster, and it might be commuting, you might angle it up just a couple of degrees higher to throw it down the road a little bit more. If you're riding a little bit slower, where the dynamo is producing a little bit less light, you may tilt it a little bit closer to the ground, and that'll utilize slightly less light and still give it the same perception of brightness. Because you're not going as fast, you don't really need that throw up as front as much. If you're doing a mixture of both, you might split the difference and put it in between those ones. But certainly you can afford to have it a little bit more down on the mountain bike, just a little bit. We're not talking much at all, and that just gives it a little bit more preference when it's more dimly lit at slower speeds.
Nice, thank you. Let's talk about one thing that I failed to ask you last time we talked, and I've been kicking myself ever since. Rear dynamo light. I have two questions there. One, all right, well, I'll give you a scenario. I have a friend that has he has one of your kLites, and then he has the same one I have, the Ultra Gravel or the mountain bike, and then but he has a B&M brake light that's tied into his Son 28. So the question is, can your system be adapted to be inclusive of that B&M that he has? Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. So simply because I made a light doesn't mean I changed the rules for the way the dynamo puts out power. Look, I have changed a little bit of the rules, and one of the secrets of the kLite system is it runs at about 20 volts AC. By upping the voltage, allows me to create a little bit more power, and that does give me a lot more light. So the only caveat with using a regular dynamo light system is that you would place in series of one of the wires a half watt or 1 watt 68 ohm resistor, and that's just going to feather the volts a little bit down to the voltage of around 6 volt that those rear lights are ready for. So certainly any regular dynamo rear light can be adapted. Having looked at the rear dynamo lights and having a look at the application of what it's meant for and some of the other uses in parallel, offering or putting demands on the power system, I have come up with my own rear light that not only achieves the safety factor of a rear light but also achieves a great power reduction, and that in turn gives back power to the GPS system that can run much more efficiently at low speed when a kLite rear light is hooked up and compared to a power hungry regular rear light. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, that's excellent. One quick follow up on that. If anybody who has a kLite and a question like that, you know, can they email you? What's the best way to get that stuff figured out?
Yeah, so soon all these questions will be in video form, and I'm taking steps to replace myself on the production floor and in the office and move into a phase of video making. I hope to put all this video information on YouTube, and all these will be certainly topics of the regular YouTube video channel, and I certainly invite all your lovely listeners to subscribe and write in. Currently we're finalising arrangements of more staff to achieve these goals. If I could just touch briefly on the kLite rear light, and people may achieve a little bit of comparison in that regard.
Yeah, I was hoping that was my next question. Is that a new? I've been seeing some stuff on Instagram. Is that a new product that you're going to be rolling out?
So I looked at a lot of the issues, and it's important to note that this exists in situations that we could call redundancy level 2 or 3. And when I design my systems, everything's based on, looking at 1,000 different points and making the best of what we can. So the theory is that a light that takes less power is certainly going to have less load on the system when you're going slow. And if you don't have a USB cache battery, because that's stuffed up, and you're down to having your GPS, which has just run out as well, that's stuffed up, directly powered by the dynamo. Then if you have a rear light, which is there to stop getting run over, or for signalling, that can really eat into the ability for the GPS to run. And so as a second and third level redundancy, I could see there was an issue there that could happen to some people. So when I design stuff, I look at every level of redundancy to make sure there's no holes for people to fall in. And I saw that the regular dynamo light, there was a hole that people could fall into and then possibly have an issue. So with the redesign of the system, I did a couple of things. Firstly, I made it flash. Now, one of the most important things that I learnt out of the inquest into Mike Hall's death was that it was thought that a constant light can be lost in a sea of reflectors on the road because they're the same colour and they're the same single non-flashing pattern. And it was thought to be a contributor to his death. And that was one of the things that was said by the coroner at the inquest. And so I thought, okay, I like to have a flashing light, and I thought, well, it's important to have a flashing light, but I do use a long flash, and that is because in Europe they don't like flashing lights because it's hard to locate distance. So the long flash is almost like having it on constantly so you can locate distance, and then I flick to some short flashes to let you know, hey, it's a bike, not a reflector. And so a flashing light was one of the big things. Now, the great things about a flashing light is it can really reduce the power. So what I built is a fully programmable little computer in there. It's amazing. I built a little computer into the cube, and what it does is whatever I want it to. So I've told it to, as soon as you start moving, instantly start. Okay, so it's got a little supercap power bank built in, so it can instantly start as soon as you move. When you stop, it'll last for 3 minutes. It will run night and day. In fact, it draws 20 milliamps, which is very, very little. When a normal light will draw 160 milliamps constantly, my light draws around 20 milliamps constantly. And so the current draw is so much reduced that you're not eating into the bottom end of your power generation at second and third level redundancy. So therefore, you not only have light in the day or night, it does not affect your USB system. It's fully automatic. It flashes. It has anti-glare optics so that the rider sitting on your wheel cannot be blinded. But from afar, you get a full whack. And it's also got the same wide beam as the kLite mountain bike, which is 150 to 4 degrees wide. And you don't have to touch it. It operates as a front flasher and a rear flasher, or a single rear flasher, or a dual rear flasher on the seat stay, for people that have a giant seat pack on their seat post. So that's a kind of, a rough thing. I've committed that to the factory. Was making it myself, but I've been unable to find the time to do that. So sadly, I've hidden that away from people, and they were very disappointed and keep wanting to know where it is. And I can tell you, well, I have submitted to the factory, but the factory are in fact overloaded. And thanks to everyone's very generous orders and their faith in me, my factory is in shutdown. I've sold every single thing that I made already, and we're about to have a big launch. When you're hearing this podcast, it's probably going to be the day we launched, which was on the 17th of February 2020. kLite has a worldwide product launch. After you're listening to this, we've had the launch, so we can talk about all that. So we're sweet.
All
That's
right.
the
All right.
point.
Very good. Very good. I do want to get into that, but I just had one other. Actually, I have an idea for my own product, and you probably maybe already have this, but here's my idea. You know the stem plate, the face plate of a stem?
Yep.
Yeah. So is it possible to make one of those plates that can be a mount for your light?
So this is what's going to happen, and this is why it's going to happen. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of things that I can make and bring out, and that's what kLite's all about. But if I release a face plate stem mount or an adapter that fits under the bolts or something, and then someone doesn't do the bolts up properly after they've fitted that, and then they have a face plant after they fitted their nice face plate, and Kerry doesn't get to be here anymore. So there's a lot of things that I'm not going to touch. But what I will do is I will create a 3D print page for others to print at their own risk my designs. Now, 3D print technology has absolutely exploded. I just brought a new 3D printer, and I've spent all weekend playing with it. And for the price, I mean, I've got a room full of $2,500 printers. This one was, I think, $500, and it's bigger. It's pretty amazing, and I'm printing in a new plastic that's a recyclable plastic that's made what all the Coke bottles and all the soda bottles are made of. So that's incredibly tough. It's a lot stronger. And so all the 3D printing parts are going to be made out of that, and we're getting all industrial 3D print hub online, and that's all part of the new change for kLite. kLite is finally getting some staff members, rather than me doing everything and everything taking a long time. I'm now getting some help with pushing stuff into bags and pushing it out the door, and that's going to allow me to get onto the design, to build the 3D print farm, to build the 3D print farm file repository, and that'll allow people to use my settings on certain printers that they can load, and then they can load my parts, and then it'll allow my parts to be printed to spec. Now, obviously, that's all for free, and so definitely I love the faceplate idea, and that's something that's been brewing for a long time. I'm all about mounts. I'm just designed a whole new version of fork crown mount that I hope to be included in the mount pack. And so mounts I have is an aero bar mount, integrated bolt-on, not zip tie, so that's one of the changes. It also has built-in integrated zero stack, so it sits really flat close to the bar. E-Trex mount, that's built into the mount. It's printed in a high-performance ASA, which is engineering style plastic that is more UV resistant and has a higher tensile strength. We're also using PETG, which is a new type of plastic, and of course that's very, very strong. So new mounts, new plastic, new strength, new designs, all downloadable and printable on at your local library or on your own 3D printer that I can advise of models that I use and settings that I use. And so I hope to create a community around the mounting systems, because that's something that is one of the core strengths of kLite, and the ability to mount everywhere. And there's even some zip tie mounts directly on the unit, so you could have no mounts, or the mounts could break and you could just zip tie it straight onto a 31/8 bar. Yeah. The new light being coated in rubber is going to stick and hold onto that amazingly well. So there's so many ways you can mount that, and so definitely on board with the stem faceplate. That is for sure.
All right, I'm in on that. All right, well, we've been talking for about an hour, so now it is time. Luckily, one of my patrons, Kyle Lincoln, if you don't know, if you're not a patron, you need to be a patron, because what you can do is you can get access to who my next guest is going to be, and you get to ask questions, and I will ask those questions for you. So Kyle Lincoln, one of my Patreons that I love, would like to know, he'd like to hear about your new equipment that you got, and then also new products that you have on the horizon. But before I have you answer those, he wanted me to share just a little statement about how, I don't know if you remember Kyle Lincoln, but he said he just wanted to express his gratitude for how amazing Kerry is in the peak of Christmas season craziness. And about a week out from my first ever big trip, the Hunt 1000, I broke the wire loom that powered my lights and USB charger. I reached out to Kerry, seeing if it was possible to make a custom loop, and he grabbed the measurements, and basically you just like hooked him up, and he was super grateful to you for excellent customer service. And he just wanted me to share that and say thank you, man. Thanks for being awesome.
Oh, wait a minute. I remember Kyle. Okay, so yeah. So he had that loaf fork, that one that bounces kind of out the front sort of thing, and it needed a longer cable, and he didn't have the right cable. So I think he ended up breaking it. And so he goes, "Oh, Kerry, I've broken it. Can I get another one?" I said, yeah, sweet, happy to help out, open it Monday, 10 o'clock, and he goes, yeah, I'm going on a trip. And I said, okay, what's going on? He goes, I leave tomorrow. I went, okay. And he goes, and I don't have a car, and I can't get to you. And I went, okay, where are you? So I ended up driving like, I don't know, half an hour or whatever it was, and then into this university and through the rabbit wire into this. Yeah, I had to find him in the university, and then they were going to book me because I was in a loading zone or something, and had to fight the parking inspector first, and then I found Link, and then for about 3/4 of an hour I dispatched a whole bunch of advice about not being scared and what to do. Anyway, what happened then is I got another call. He's on the route, and he goes, I kind of stuffed up. I kind of like, my wire kind of flicked out and got caught in the spokes, and it broke off the new wire that I just sent him, hand delivered to him. And I'm like, oh, Link, what are you doing? I said, where are you? And he goes, I'm here. There's nothing around. I don't know what to do. And I said, all right, take a breath, sit down. We're going to fix this. And I said, you ever twisted together speaker wires? He goes, oh, yeah, I did my dad's stereo or something. I said, just do that. I said, the whole thing's super easy to work on. I said, you'll be surprised. Anyway, 5 minutes later, oh, wow, all fixed. Yeah, that was easy. Dun, dun, dun. He's all back together again for the second time. Anyway, I love that guy. He hated it. He was hating on it, and he just kept going. And then for some reason, Australia decided to have freaky weather. Oh, I don't know why. Anyway, it started to snow on him, and he was in a blizzard, and all the fun stuff happened, and he just punched it on through.
Yeah, nice, very good. All right, well, we already talked a little. I don't know if you have more equipment than the 3D printer, but we kind of talked about that a little bit. So whatever you want to say about new equipment, and then let's talk about the new products that you have coming out.
So, Kerry from kLite here, and we have the hot goss. We have the new products coming out 2020. Kerry from kLite, that's me. I'm going to come to the Tour Divide and personally shake every kLite customer's hand to thank them for their support over the years. So, yep, 2020 Tour Divide, here I come. I'm then cruising over to the BC Epic to go ride that and be epic. kLite is taking over a race team for the event, and we're going to have a couple of kLite riders doing the rounds, saying g'day, being kLite ambassadors to spread the cheer. I'll be riding the event from the back and mingling through as I cruise down to the finish. I'm going to be going as slow as I can to enjoy it. I will not be rushing to the end. So certainly that's what I hope to do.
Are you talking about on the Tour Divide or on the BC?
I'm going to the BC, but I'll be heading to the TD before the BC.
10-4, amigo. That's exciting.
And I'll be showing... Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting. Look, I haven't booked my tickets yet because I don't know what's happening with the super virus. I don't know if I'll be even able to board the plane, so I'm just giving it a little bit longer to see how that pans out.
Can you say who's on your kLite team?
Well, I'm going to drop a clue, and I can say that one of the riders is 7 times world 24-hour champion.
All right. Everybody Google it.
Google. He actually lives in my hometown. I mean, just the most nicest guy in the world. It's sickening. Like, it's ridiculous. He's so nice. He's a Christian, so he's got all the good values and all that stuff. He's wholesome. He probably, eats oats, and he's really nice to his kids, all that stuff. But yeah, like super, super nice guy. And he's become a really good friend over the years that we've been riding and racing. Obviously, his discipline is 24-hour race. And I've just said to him, round and round is not trendy anymore. What's super trendy is getting out there and going big. So the dot watching sport is the new thing, and I think it's going to inspire a whole bunch of people. I want this guy to carry the flame for adventure.
Nice.
This guy will carry your hopes and dreams on his shoulders. Hey, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? No, he's just gonna roll.
He's
down.
just gonna ride his bike, really.
Roll down from Mexico towards Mexico and just enjoy himself. I mean,
Nice. What about you, man? Are you you're gonna be doing the BC Epic? Are you ready?
I'm gonna do the BC Epic with the other rider I'm bringing over.
Okay. Are you ready though? How are you feeling?
Oh, I've been riding all my life. For 30 years. And so these sorts of trips, I don't think of it as 1,000 kilometers. I just think of it as 100 something every day. That's just, I used to do that as a courier every day, so it's just do it. And yeah, it's going to hurt. I'm probably going to cry, but going to have to hug onto my mate because he's coming. He is a ex-Australian #1 cross-country racer. And he had everything burnt down, all his bikes and everything bike-related burnt in the fires. And he rang me up and he said, I've got to change my life up. I've got to do something. I'm going back on the road. I'm going to start racing again. And he says, I'm going over doing the BC Epic. And I said, get out. And he said, yeah. He said, where's that? And I said, it's Canada. He said, and I said, really? And it turns out it's like at the same time. So I'm like, I'm so going there. So him and me, we're going to ride from Vancouver. So we're going to ride from Vancouver to Merritt, where the race starts. And then we're going to ride to Fernie, where the race finishes. But then we're going to keep on going backwards up the TD route to Banff. Because that just seems what you do. So we're just going to do that. And see what happens. I've got a Baker's cyst in my knee, and Saul's got a Baker's cyst in his knee. So we've both got the same limitations, and so if we push it too hard on the hills and that swells up too much, it then stops the knee from hinging. So we need to avoid, the load, light pedal our way through, and it should be all sweet. My left arm doesn't work real good because of too much overuse, and hopefully with the staff members coming online, I can alleviate some of those issues. And I've got some aero bars where I can rest my arm on, and it's good. It's the left side, you know what I mean? So I haven't got the shifter on it. And I've got the rear brake now on my right hand, so that I can do everything with the right sort of thing.
In America, the right hand is the rear brake.
Yeah, so I'm American standard now for my braking, which suits me. I can rest my arm on the aero bar, and that'll get me through. And I'll plod along, and Saul, the kLite representative, is going to come on board. Now, Saul, me, and 7 times world champion are bringing over a new kLite wheel set.
Ooh, hot news! Woo woo!
You heard it here. Look, for the last 6 months, I've been working on something that I really wanted. It's a wheel set specifically designed for bike packing. Specifically, it's carbon, but because carbon can crack, we've taken a leaf out of the Formula 1 F1 cars. So their carbon, they have a Integra mesh. It's kind of like, imagine a plastic spiderweb mesh or whatever that's tightly woven. Okay, so it's springy and it can't break, right? And the idea of the mesh, so we remove some of the dead carbon layers. So the carbon has kind of like, it's not springy like steel, eh? It can resist, and once it stops resisting, it breaks. And it breaks pretty quickly. It's got no sort of, modular strength to it. So we've whipped 2 layers of this T800 off, which is your regular carbon, or your T900, the regular carbon they use, and we've replaced it with this new Integra mesh. So the Integra mesh is springier and it's lighter. And so if you've got a little bit of stiffness mixed with a little bit of springiness, it's a better overall concept. It's going to allow a carbon rim to absorb the energy a little bit better, because it's got a slightly higher modulus to it. It's even if those rims layers and the carbon crack, you can't crack this. It's not a carbon. It's a mesh, so it won't break, and it'll get you home. So that's the major thing. Yeah, it costs a little bit of money extra to have the little mesh. So I've gone for 2 layers, so it's lighter. The rim has a higher springiness and modulus. We're making aero version, so we've got an aero gravel, and we've got a wide mountain bike. So the mountain bike one's 35, the gravel's 30, but it's aero, it's super fast, full tubeless. Now, not only is it got the unbreakable Integra mesh, but it's also custom drilled for the high flange hubs. So we know about spoke angle, right? Ideally, in an ideal world, if you pull that spoke across too much, the spoke angle can load up the side of the carbon rim and it can crack it. And so we want to get the spoke drilling as right as we can. So we actually custom drilled these rims for Sun Dynamo hubs and also SP hubs, and the DT range of rear hubs, so DT 350, DT 240, etc. So does that make sense? So good quality nipples, full DT build, hub of your choice, carbon that's super fast, because they've got to be fast, because over 2,000 or 3,000 miles, it makes a huge difference if you've got aero parts. So everything's got to be fast now. So fast wheels, unbreakable Integra mesh, custom drilled for the high flange hubs, so less worry about spoke angle, built in the kLite wheel building factory, shipped around the world to your door. No more bullshit eyes around. Now, also, if you have a reputable wheel builder that you like to use, of course, they can get rims, etc., etc. We're also looking at doing a custom drilled rim for the roll-off to expand that internal geared hub rear wheel range. They look unbelievably sexy. And
when are they going to be available?
Product.
When can people buy them? When can people buy them?
Well, a couple of people have got them already, but it's something that I'm starting out small and see what happens. You know, if people like what I do and they understand that I have personally built over 5,000 wheels personally in my 30-year career as a bicycle mechanic, and I'd like to think I have a little bit of experience. Now, there's a lot of people with experience out there, and that's not to say that I'm going to do a better or worse job than them. But for me, I wanted a wheel that designed by me that meet all the things that I wanted when I do my long distance riding. I wanted my cake and eat it. I wanted, you know, the nice resilient of an aluminium rim. I wanted the feel of an aluminium rim and that springiness you get from it, which you don't get in carbon. I wanted that injected, and I wanted my lightweightness. And by layering up with these two Integra layers, I can really achieve similar properties to my twin beam light. I have a better overall modulus in the rim, and I believe the extra strength is something that going to give people faith and confidence in carbon, and certainly my research has pointed out that the number one reason people do not use carbon is reliability. And so in my hope to address the major points and then some of the finer points to achieve something that is of good build quality and in my hope to be good value.
Well, whenever you said bike packing specific, and then the next word out of your mouth was carbon, you lost me there for a second, but you got me back. Hey,
I'm going to try it. We're going to give it a go, roll around on them. I've ridden them and they feel unbelievable. I'm rocking them over baby head size rocks, and they feel so smooth. It's crazy, and for some reason they feel faster than my 60mm deep dish rims. I've got some Nexty deep dish on my roadie bike, and these feel faster because they're fat and they're wide. I think it's where everyone's going, and the fatness and the wide roundness of the bulge gives us a little bit more kind of flex in the sidewalls rather than the traditional V profile rims, and that aids a little bit to the modulus of the rim. So yeah, really excited. They look amazing. We've got them drilled custom to the rims, so we're dotting every I and every T, and spoke nipples and DT spokes, and all the build with the DT rear hubs. For instance, the 135mm can turn into a 142x12, which can turn into a XD driver, which can turn into a Shimano driver or a micro spline driver. You can get a 148 hub, so a couple of builds we're going to offer is the 135/142/12 build with SP, and then a pro build, which is your 148 and 15mm TA for the mountain bike version and Sun, and we're going to use a 12mm for the gravel version. So that's a really quick overview of that product range. And happy to get a test set out for you to roll around on once they become available.
Wow, thank you. Very generous. I'll be happy to take you up on it. What about the new light? Let's talk about what is different in the new light. Give us all the goosey gossip. What did you call it?
Give you the scoop. The juicy goss.
The juicy goss. That's what it is.
Yeah, so look, it's just smaller. So I wanted to take it all to the final level. So essentially I wanted to sign off on factory production. It's taken me 4 years to design the light, and originally we were going to have it overmolded, but we failed, and we couldn't get the tooling sorted to do that. So we produced a 3D printed housing. It was never meant to be covered in a 3D printing housing, and that increased the size by about 25%. So in the background, I was always working on going back to that overmolding. The whole design of the light was when we reversed it. So normally a light is metal on the outside, and that's to cool it. And then the guts are on the inside, and you've got to seal it, and if the O-rings fail, water gets in, and it's reasonably heavy, and because the LEDs are on the inside, you've got many thermal junctions, which limits cooling effectiveness and which limits efficiency. So by reversing the light onto a single thermal core, we increased efficiency by reducing thermal junctions. We also made a lighter light, and the final step was to wrap that in a 90 Shore hardness rubber. So the whole idea of the kLite's a tank. It's a brute made for war. The whole idea is that it can bounce, you can kick it, you can whack it on a rock, and so this new molds and this new machine that we got in, this giant machine clamps around the kLite and then injects a rubber cover over it. Now, because we don't have the 3D printed case, it ends up being smaller, 25% smaller, lighter, and more robust and more sealed. And so we've really achieved that end game in respect to finalising the finish and the features and functions of that product.
Yeah, so it seems like you, if it's taking you 4 years and it's in its final form, is that's what it's allowing you to kind of look at other things like wheels and making videos and all the other projects and then also obviously you're bringing on some people to help out too. But
yeah, it's really a labour of love. I calculated I spent around 52,000 hours for free working on it. I work probably 120-hour weeks. And I don't do anything or have time to have a life, and it became unacceptable for me to do that. Happy to lay my life down to get it all started, and certainly I've killed myself to get here with very little money and very little support, but that's life. Shit happens, you get on with it and you get the job done. Now that I'm getting close to getting the job done, I'm now wanting to have a little bit more life, and part of the staff and part of finalising the product, part of the media, part of the 3D printing, part of the travel is all about that ongoing transition into becoming professional.
You're man, you have a crazy life story going from a gutter to where you are now. Yeah. I are you gonna write a book? Maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you need to like retire and just write a book.
I'll tell you what's happening. Thank you so much for asking, Patrick. Look, I'll tell you what is happening. Now that I'm crossing over, I'm going to cross over to public speaking. So I feel that I can relate to so many different types of people. I can talk to a grandma. I can talk to a young person. I can talk to a person of any nation, any country. I have that ability, I think, and can learn any abilities I don't have. And so for me, it's public speaking. And this trip coming up, TDR and BC and all that will be the start. And then I'll continue to do the podcast with you. And I'll continue to travel around the world, and I'll make short movies and short films and documentaries about bringing the world of bicycles back and affecting the change that we are all coming from. Before grocery stores were invented, we made our food at home, and in the 50s and the 40s, that's how everyone lived. And since we've got the convenience of shopping malls and the convenience of supermarkets and the convenience of everything, it does seem that this convenience factor has started to really diminish our lifestyle. So for me, it's important to swing that pendulum back away from cars and to be on the bikes and let our city planners know that we want more bike-centric places. And I think the e-bike revolution is a huge driving force in that. I hear Europe is reducing speed limits, narrowing roads, and getting rid of cars, because the e-bike revolution, the electric revolution, will aid in that, and by localizing transport and localizing food sources, I think we can go a long way towards reducing the carbon footprint of our food transportation and our personal transportations with bicycles and localization.
I gotta tell you, man. I mean, I think that is your calling. It's taken you a lifetime to get to where you are, to amass the experiences that you have, and you don't realize it, but you've become a little bit of a personal hero of mine. I feel like I'm just a little bit behind you because we have a similar path in that I was a deadbeat, in jail, homeless. All the things, and made it a conscious effort to kill that guy and be a new guy, and did it intentionally, figured out the things that were really important to me, and to live a life intentionally, revolved around those things that I think are important. But you do such a excellent job of articulating it, and you've just, I mean, on a personal level, it's a really, I feel like you're on my team. I feel
Well, have you heard the saying, great men are forged in fire?
Sure.
Let's dissect that. I wanted to be a great man, and I knew the fire was the suffering, and I suffered for what I have achieved, and the toll was great. I have less health now than I did, and it's awful. But it was my choice, and that is something that I have to live with. But as I said from the beginning, my life, if I was to die tomorrow, the world's still going to keep going, so I think for me, I just need to stop making excuses. Like, the person in the wheelchair rolls past you because they've come to grips with the fact that they're in a wheelchair and they've gone on with it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I've just got to get on with it. It doesn't matter who I am, what shell my head's in, am I in a wheelchair speaking words through a little computer? We've all shown that great minds can live in any shell. And so I just wanted to prove the power of one person, and to release people from what I call the hat of shame. Have you heard that terminology? Now, I don't know if I made it up, but it's something that I've said to myself to better understand it. So the hat of shame is a hat that society perpetuates and gives to a type of person, or a person that they believe is a type of person. Really easy ones for Americans, I assume, would be people of colour and Jewish people. So they have been given a hat of shame, and they need to abide within the rules of that hat. Now, I see it here in Australia, and I'll give you an example. So if you're a true blue, fair dinkum Aussie bloke with your thongs and your mullet and your six-pack, you're allowed to be loud and obnoxious because that's Aussie. But if you were from another country, or another type of person, or if you were a person that was not dressed appropriately, or if you're a gay man, or if you're something else, there's certain rules that society kind of pretend to put on you. This is really what I call the hat of shame. It's a hat that I personally brought into. I wore that hat of shame. As a homeless person, I felt I was less worthy. Now, it's not because I was less worthy. It was because that's what I was taught, or that's what I was led to believe. This is a hat of shame. And you'll see people wear this hat of shame without even thinking about it. So they adopt the stigma that society's perpetuated, but it's not often true stigma. It's not really realistic. It's just old stuff kind of flowing back into the past, old wives' tales, etc., etc. We all know not every single person of one type of ethnicity or religion or whatever, not every single one of them is bad. We all know that's not true. So, we can't say that, every single Muslim is bad. It's really ridiculous. We can't say that every native person or every Aboriginal person is bad. We can't really say that. But that is a conditioning that people have, and that perpetuates the shame that they must push on the other person, and they must feel, so you can't do this or that because you're this. It's like, that's kind of bullshit. And so I brought into it. For a long, long time, I was told that I was dumb, and that I was put in all the dumb classes, and that, I was an idiot, and I believed that. And it wasn't until I went into Shark Tank and realised that, hey, I'm kind of like not that dumb. If you guys are saying that, that means that I must be at least kind of as smart as you guys. And so that gave me a release from that shame, that conditioning, that hat that I was wearing. And so that hat of shame is something that society perpetuates, that pushes on to people and ethnic minorities. Don't know why, but it just happens. It's prejudice, really. And I wanted to, say I'm sorry for that to people. That was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, all we can do, I mean, I don't know, it goes back to your individual choices. Like, I just feel like we're so influenced by everything around us, and maybe it's society that makes us this way, but we each need to evaluate the things in our life that are building us up, that are bringing us happiness. And when you're happy and you're satisfied and you like who you are because you did a good thing that day and you worked hard and you're a good husband or whatever it is, then you're more inclined to just be a happy person, and treat other people well and want happiness for other people as well.
It's the biggest shame of the world is that we're not free to be ourselves, because the government have seeked to add certain controls on us and keep us struggling, for want of a better word. So we can't cook, we can't really grow our own food anymore. I mean, we can't even, in Colorado, you can't even collect your own water, you know what I mean? So they've kind of stopped you from living for yourself, so you've got to live through their means and the supermarkets and everything, which turns into struggle street, and you poor Americans have got to work 2 or 3 jobs to even get anywhere. I'm simply blessed to have the luxury to have my life back. I worked very hard and I brought my life back, so now I can spend time, making stuff and inventing stuff. But I feel there's so many amazing people like me that are flipping burgers, working 2 or 3 jobs, struggling, and it's just an indictment on the way society's run. It's thought that a business model where everyone got paid and was free to do what they would want would be something of a more creative world that we lived in. But I just think that the government's use of workforce control and stuff really limits people's creativity. Who's got the energy to do anything when they come home after working 60, 80 hours a week? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Is I talk about happiness, but if you're just working all the time. But there's a lot of layers to that onion. Of course, I think one problem is consumerism, and people want to buy a nicer car or a nicer house or whatever expense it might be, and then you have to work really hard to pay for it, and you really gotta put, at least for me, I feel like you had to put your priority in order and say, okay, is that extra $300,000 house worth me working for an extra 10 years? And that's the way I look at it. It's like, okay, is it going to take me 10 years to earn $300,000? Well, is that house worth 10 years of my life working for, somebody else, So I don't know. There's a lot of layers to that onion.
One layer is don't buy stuff by experience. So I'll give you an example. I don't remember I've had a few houses I've lived in, and I've only owned one house, is the one I live in now, which I'm paying off. But I've had some stuff. I don't remember what stuff I had, but I remember vividly the experiences that changed my life. That's what I remember. So my simple goal is to get people to put their bum on a seat and their hand on a handlebar. That's all I need to do. Because as soon as that person rolls off into the world and the world's suddenly at a slower pace, and the fact that they don't need their car and their kLite lights their way and charges their phone, and they get home and, they can have a cheaper life, and it's the way it's all going. Like, I got called up by this guy. This guy wrote to me. His name was Jimmy. And Jimmy's in the middle of LA. And I thought Jimmy was such a badass dude. I rang him up. I said, "Hey, Jimmy, it's Keza from Australia. What's up, buddy?" And he was like, who is this? And I said, "Kerry from Australia." And he goes, "What?" And so I rapped to him for about an hour, man. But this guy single-handedly changed the centre of LA to, over the last 10 years, to be more bike-centric, eh? And he puts on festivals and shows and stuff. And, like, I said, "Oh, come over. Look, I ended up, don't know if I got much time to get over to LA, but I'll definitely Skype him and get on board with something that he does." But he gets old bikes, converts them into cargo bikes, get the homeless people of that area to do that, to learn the skill. And then those homeless people, he takes them over to third world countries or to Mexico or whatever, and gifts those bikes to people. Because in some people's lives, a pair of shoes would be amazing, right? And then a bicycle would be amazing. So they're two things that can change someone's life, right? And I said, "Look, I pay that. I love that shit." You know what I mean? And then kLite was so in keeping of what he was doing. So I said, yeah, hook up with a dealership. Yep, boom. So then Jimmy can get on board and he can order whatever he needs. I said, "Well, I'll help you design a basic kLite that you guys can make just for free, eh? Like, I don't care. Whatever. I'll just help out." So, it's those sorts of people. It's this pendulum swing back. Because we've had the swing from, so the 50s and 60s, we didn't full on market then, right? And we've kind of swung to the supermarkets and then getting all your shit, and then, oh my God, iPhone, wow. And then we're powering through that, and then we've gone, oh, now it's all cheap rubbish in China. You don't even know what you're buying. It could be more expensive, but it's still made in China. And then we've heard that China's the most polluting country in the world. Then we've heard that all the workers get really ripped off. I thought, okay, well, shit, I can't vote for China. I can't. I'm sorry, but I have to vote with my feet. And so we'll go back to the voting thing where I've got to vote not to buy Chinese. You know what I mean? Everything's done here in Australia. And I pay a lot of money to do that. All the workers here, they've got families that they feed and, all that sort of stuff. But realistically, this is how we've got to vote. We've got to vote away from pollution and away from mass production and mass transport over to personal production, personal transport. Okay, so 3D printers are so cheap. A 3D printer will make a 3D printer. I mean, like, hello, I've got another new one and they're printing out little baby robots as we speak, man. Like, seriously. Like, we should all just be getting back to making stuff, getting super simple, getting localized, buying our lives back, and consuming less. So let's get on that, everyone. And we're going to have some videos about how we can all do that as a community. And obviously, people in different areas can do different things, and lots of different ideas. And a making world is what's going to bring everything back from mass-produced Chinese polluting economy.
Beautiful, man. Well said. Well, anything else before we wrap up this edition of Kerry from kLite?
So, look, if anyone's coming to the Tour Divide 2020, come up and say g'day or hey, Kerry. And I'll definitely sit down and drink the beer that you're going to buy for me because I'd love to chat, eh? I love hearing the feedback. I love hearing the stories. I love hearing what has worked and what hasn't worked. I'll be on my bike, so I won't have a heap of stock with me, but I'll have a few bits of bits and bobs of wire and all that sort of stuff. So definitely catch up with me at the Tour Divide 2020 and then the BC Epic 2020. I'd just like a shout out to Patrick for this platform, and I love what you do. I've got a sticker on the back of my van, and I'll tell everyone about you. And I said, listen to the podcast, they're great. He talks to everyone. So look, I wish you all the best and success for the future, and hope you get to rock your van out more and more.
For sure, man. Appreciate all your support, and I love all these long form conversations. I get to share people like you with the world, and all the way down to like Alana that was just on here, and she's a 16-year-old bike packer. And there's just, like you said, there's wonderful people, amazing stories everywhere, and I love being able to share them with the world, get people inspired to go out there and ride their damn bike a little bit more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, seriously, it doesn't matter if you don't have the money to buy kLite. Like, best recommendation is to start with a quick charge battery, USB case battery, and just have a quick charge wall charger. So the wall charger's got to match. It's got to be QC 3.0, and the USB case battery's got to be a QC 3.0, or both have got to be a USB PD. Get out with just a case battery and some rechargeable lights. Like, in the summer, it's light for so long, and you probably don't even need a dynamo light. You know what I mean? So at least get out there, see what you actually do and don't need before you spend any money. Don't believe the hype. Always question everything yourself, because at the end of the day, it's only yourself that's out there, and you've got to really know yourself what you can do and what you can't do. And yeah, you might have watched a whole bunch of videos, but it all comes down to being out there. So definitely test and check, get out there and spend a bit of time in the bush. Don't worry about the gear so much, because I did it back in the day with nothing, and I had an absolute blast. So it's all about making memories and not getting teched out by equipment, because seriously, man, if all you've got is a unicycle or a scooter, just get out there and live. So thanks again, Pat. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kerry. Anytime, my platform is always open to you, my friend.
You.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Kerry calling in all the way from Australia. We worked on the audio a bit, and I still think it has a little bit to go, but it's definitely better than the first time. As I sort out the kinks of doing over the phone interviews, I'm always working to get better at the audio quality so that you can enjoy it, and you can enjoy it even more. Once again, please do me a huge favor. Head over to Bikes or Death. Check out all the ways that you can support the show. There's a new feature over on Patreon. I've released a Patreon-only podcast called Shifting Gears. Currently, the format for that show is simply me talking about my preparation for the Grand Gravel 500 that is coming up in like 15 days from now. Not trained, not ready, but gonna give it hell, and I'm taking you along for the journey all the way through training, what I'm doing, how many miles a day I'm riding, and I'll keep it going all the way through the Grand Gravel 500. And then, of course, I'll do a post-race wrap-up, and then I've got some ideas as to what that show is going to be going forward. But if that sounds interesting to you, it's available on Patreon right now for only $1 a month. You can find it on my website, or just go to patreon.com/bikesor-death. And not only are you getting access to that great content, but I let you know who future guests are before they come on and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And you help me afford the ability to continue to produce an excellent podcast just for you. As always, don't forget to head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review if you would. It is ever so helpful in having people find the show, discover it, and spread the word of bikepacking and the great outdoors. And with that said, I think it's time for me to get to training. I've got a big race ahead of me, so I'm going to go ride my damn bike.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes,